NieR Automata, a story set in a post-apocalyptic Earth where humanity has fled to the moon, leaving androids to battle alien machines in their place. Goddess of Victory Nikke, also a post-apocalyptic future, where the Earth's surface has been overrun by mechanical aliens called raptures. Humanity fled underground. And what is humanity's last hope? Artificial soldiers known as Nikkes. So, when these two worlds collide, the big question is, does the crossover work? Let's dive into the story and find out. Before we get started, spoiler warning, this video is going to go over the full story of the crossover event. It includes references to the Goddess Squad, so you'll see footage from some of their banners, plus clips from NieR Automata's game and anime. Why? Because the static sprites can get kinda boring to stare at. I am trying to make this at least a little more enjoyable to watch. The moment you open the event banner, you're hit with a familiar loading screen. And then I heard it, Emil's shop music. And I gotta say, chasing him down for shop items was as much fun as it was in Automata. The story opens in a factory. Gunshots echo through the air. Mass-produced Nikkes are locked in battle with raptures. And then, boom, a sudden flash of light. Then there's a voice trying to wake up 9S, and it's 2B. Now, a quick side note, and it's a bit disappointing. This entire event has no voice acting, just dialogue. Lots and lots of reading. 2B and 9S are confused. Last thing they remember, they were using the transportation devices to get back to the bunker, but something went wrong. They blacked out. When they woke up, they were in this world. No transporters, no pods, and no way to contact the bunker. They're completely cut off. Meanwhile, the commander gets an update from Anderson. Another D-wave just occurred. Now, in Nikke terms, D-waves are energy pulses from the Gatekeeper that bring visitors from other worlds. Kind of like what we saw in the Stellar Blade collab. And probably every collab they do. So the commander joins up with Roppy, Anise, and Neon to check it out. At the factory, the squad runs into 3 mass-produced Nikke standing guard. They were sent here on a recon mission. When asked for their names, they admit they don't have any. Mass-produced models don't get names. But one of them saw a spy movie recently, so codenames it is. We've got C-1002, 6000D, and B-006. Each one of them picked these numbers based on their favorite numbers. One was on patrol near the power supply. Another just woke up inside the factory with no clue how she got there. After hearing loud noises, she ran out. Naturally, Roppy and the squad decide to check it out and ask the trio to lead the way. Up above, 2B and 9S are quietly watching the group. They can't hear the conversation, but they are observing. These are the first people they've seen since arriving. 2B tried exploring earlier, but they seem to be trapped by some invisible barrier. They don't know who these Nikkes are, or if they're the ones who put up the barrier. So for now, they follow. Inside the factory, it's eerily quiet. No raptures in sight. Of course, that doesn't last. After some brief chatter, the raptors show up. The battle's quick, nothing Roppy's squad can't handle. But something's off. These raptors don't have cores. They're hollow. Then they vanish in a flash of light. As they push deeper into the facility, Roppy suddenly stops. She senses something, but nothing's there. They continue on. The screen cuts to black again. A voice urges someone to wake up. It's dangerous to sleep here. It's A2. She looks around confused. A mass-produced Nikke is standing nearby. A2 asks where they are. The Nikke has no idea. A2 says the last thing she remembers was entering the transporter and then seeing an error message, then waking up here. Okay, time out. Let's address this now instead of saving it for later. Yoko Taro did not write this story. And this bit about A2 using a transporter, don't think that's ever been a thing. At least before Route C of Automata. Sure, the player used the transporters, but A2 more than likely didn't use them because, Yorha was after her, and more than likely didn't know how to use it. Maybe Pod told her about them eventually in the game. Or maybe I'm wrong, and this is how she got from Hawaii to Japan in Automata. Either way, plot convenience. Moving on. A2 realizes the transporter is gone and she's covered in dust, meaning she's been there for a while. She doesn't recognize anything around her. The Nikke is confused by A2's behavior, until A2 suddenly points her sword at her. She's trying to figure out who or what this Nikke is. They exchange questions. A2 asks if she's a machine life form or an android. The Nikke doesn't understand those terms. Then a rapture shows up. The Nikke says she'll protect A2 and humanity. But let's be real, and to no one's surprise, A2 handles most of it herself. Afterward, A2 asks if the Nikke's seen a transporter. She hasn't, but might have seen something similar nearby. A2 asks why she's helping her, and the Nikke says, "Because I felt like it, I guess." Back with Rappi's team, they're still fighting hollow raptures. The team is finally able to take a break. Now, a really quick note, if you aren't familiar with Nikke, there are mass-produced models that are the same body type, like we see in NieR with the number 2 models. But also in Nikke, there are models that are unique, like Rappi and the rest of the team. The 3 mass-produced Nikkes admit they feel weird looking at each other. Same face, same voice, it's uncanny. Apparently, most same model Nikkes don't get along, but these 3, they actually feel a sort of kinship. Rappi and Neon also confirm, yeah, this kind of harmony is super rare, and go into more detail about it. The group hears gunfire from a room and the door is labeled Central Production Room. It doesn't sound like raptures, but it's odd. The sound, it's in a pattern. Rappi suggests checking it out. Before they enter, she senses something again. Turns, nothing there. They head inside. What they find is surreal. Rows of Nikke and raptures facing off, endlessly shooting and reloading. The Nikkes are the same model as the ones in your party. Anish tries to interact, no response. They're stuck in a loop. So the team decides to take out the raptures. Back to A2 and her new companion, the Nikke realizes she doesn't know A2's name. A2 tells her and asks for hers. The Nikke says she's just called Product Model 12. A2 shortens it to P12, and P12 lights up. She's thrilled to finally have a name. And of course, A2 knows what that's like. Back during the Pearl Harbor descent mission, Rose gave A2 and her team their names. This hits home. P12 tries to figure out what A2 is. Not human, not a Nikke, not a rapture. A2 says she's an android. She doesn't elaborate much. She just says she's a humanoid weapon made to protect mankind. Nikkes, on the other hand, are android-like beings that have human brains. Androids just have consciousness data, like what they described in the Pearl Harbor descent mission. Memories of a human's past life. A2 is done talking about this though, and walks off. Rappi's squad is still fighting, but the raptors just keep coming, and the mass-produced Nikkes still on the loop, until suddenly they stop. They turn, and then they start chanting, "Exterminate, exterminate," and they open fire on Rappi and the others. 6000D fires back. Some Nikkes are decapitated, and when their head rolls across the ground, we see they are hollow. A2 and P12 reach a similar area. Nikkes and raptures locked in a loop. A2 panics, thinking it's an enemy base, but P12 says they'll be fine, just walk behind the line. To prove it, she shouts loudly, and no reaction. They start to pass through safely, but then the Nikkes stop. They start repeating interference over and over again. Weapons raise, a shot is fired, it narrowly misses A2. P12 and A2 then bolt. They make it to the other side of the corridor and close the door behind them. The raptures join in on the chase as well. P12 knows of a safe route, but A2 knows they'll have to fight. She draws her sword and begins to fight the raptures with P12 at her side. Meanwhile, Rappi's group try to make a run for it. When they make it out of the room, they get stuck in a hallway, raptors in front and rogue Nikkes behind them. Then they hear a voice, "Get back!" 2B sweeps in, takes out the raptures. Then 9S and her guide everyone to safety. Outside, Rappi turns and aims her weapon at them. She asks if they were the ones that were following the group. 2B confirms, They needed to learn more about who Roppy and the others were. Roppy lowers her weapons and begins the standard questioning. Are you human? Are you Nikke's? And we hear 2B, I don't know what a Nikke is. Roppy does ask her, does anything in this world look familiar? 9S says, no, nothing. Anise asks, what are they? 2B explains, we're androids created to protect humanity. And that wraps up part 1 of the crossover event. Now, to get into the other perks and minigames in this event, first up, the minigames, they're gonna look very familiar. It's the hacking minigame from NieR Automata. This version is mostly auto-aim and auto-fire for the player, so it's not too tough. The only time I struggled was, for some reason, they zoomed in way too close on some of these maps. Completing these hacking minigames rewards you with some archive files from the Nikke who were in the factory. And the final hacking mission, pretty clever, is designed to look like the main menu of the game. As for the extra characters you could pull from this banner, we've got 2B, A2, and Pascal. This is actually the second time the event has come around. The first time was back in 2023. Originally, there was one more minigame where you teamed up online to take out raptures, but they didn't include that this time. Because it's summer, they gave us swimsuit versions of 2B and A2. A2 is free, but for 2B, yeah, it's time to open up that wallet. Alright, now back to the story. Part 2 of this event. Roppy and the others are taking a water break. 2B and 9S begin introducing themselves, explaining they're from another world. They also talk about their mission, defeating the gatekeeper, so they can return home. 9S is especially surprised to finally meet a human. He never expected to find one, even in another world. They discuss how they arrived, and Roppy and the others explain that they were brought to this world by a raptor called a gatekeeper, and how they need to find it and destroy it. Since 2B and 9S already explored the factory's exterior with no results, it's still likely inside. 2B also explains why they were following Roppy's group. They needed to figure out whose side were they on. Were they responsible for 2B and 9S being here? Or were they just as stuck? 9S mentions that the factory is actively producing raptures and mass-produced Nikkes. They'll need to search deeper to find the production source. 2B and 9S asked to join Roppy and the others on their return to the factory. Cut to A2 and P12. A2 points her sword at P12, demanding answers. Who is she, and what were those things they just fought? P12 admits she doesn't know who she is, only that she's a Nikke created to protect humans and eliminate raptures. She was stuck in a cycle of endlessly firing at raptures, until one day, she stopped. When she tried talking to the others, none of them responded. They just kept firing. P12 decided to start exploring the factory. While exploring, P12 found A2. And now we're back to the present moment. A2 tells her to lead the way, but warns her, one wrong move, and she won't hesitate to strike her down. Back with Roppy's group, they suspect the gatekeeper is creating brainless Nikke replicas. The Product 12 models with them begin to question their own existence. 2B cuts in, saying there's no point in dwelling on what they don't know. For now, there's no way to get to the bottom of it. Anise suggests that until proven otherwise, they assume the Nikkes have human brains. They decide to head back to the factory. The mass-produced Nikkes choose to come too. They want to see the truth for themselves. 9S, using his scanning and hacking abilities, finds a shorter path. Neon and Anise are amazed, reacting like little kids who saw a new shiny toy. Along the way, the Nikkes start asking 2B and 9S what androids are. 9S gives a similar explanation. Unlike Nikkes, androids don't have human brains. They run on consciousness data. As they move through the factory, they encounter a barrier that blocks their path. Physical attacks don't work. Roppy and 2B put that to the test themselves. There's a short moment between the Nikkes. Roppy says they'd understand if the mass-produced models wanted to turn back. After all, they might have to fight others, just like themselves. But the models wanted to keep going. Suddenly, the ground shakes. Cut to A2 and P12. A2 wants to wake up the gatekeeper. P12 asks, how? And, well, it's A2. She pulls out her sword and starts swinging. Guns don't work, and even ramming the barrier with her own body doesn't help. Nothing works, not even making noise. Then she tries something different, attacking the doors in the room. That gets a reaction. The Nikkes in the room begin to stir, and now A2 and P12 are in a fight. A2 notices more doors that the Nikkes and Raptures seem to be guarding. She smashes through those doors and everything in her way. The enemy freezes, the barrier drops, and then the gatekeeper awakens. Back with Roppy and the others, the shaking stops. The barrier that blocked them lifts. They move forward into a hallway with multiple doors, the source of the Nikke and Rapture production. 9S detects the gatekeeper deeper inside, but first, they'll have to fight. 2B draws her sword, and the mass-produced Nikkes raise their weapons. We get a glimpse of B006's thoughts. Her first memory is waking up in that factory. She worries she's just a hollow shell, but then she thinks about 2B and 9S. They don't have human brains, yet they're still individuals. As she points her weapon at her fellow mass-produced models, she wonders, what if she never opened her eyes? Would she have been just like them? She doesn't want to die. She wants to live. But she also doesn't want to fight others like herself. So she jumps between the two sides. She begs everyone to stop fighting. If 2B and 9S can live lives without human brains, why can't they? Then, plot twist, 600D tells her to shut up and raises her gun, shoots B0006, and they see the truth. Her head is hollow too. Back with A2 and P12, turns out there are two gatekeepers. P12 suggests they run. This thing is massive. A2 tells her to go ahead. Her mission's done. She did her job leading A2 here, but P12 refuses. This is her first real decision since waking up. She chooses to stay and fight. One of the gatekeepers fires a beam of light or energy towards the ceiling. The light is gone before they could figure out what it was, but afterward, the gatekeeper seems weaker. A2 doesn't miss this opportunity. They defeat the gatekeeper, then there's a flash of light, and it's gone. In its place stands a transporter. A2 starts to thank P12, but then P12 begins to glow. P12 explains that they destroyed the very thing that created her, so she's disappearing with it. A2 is furious. If she knew this would happen, why did she fight? P12 replies, I told you, this was my choice. She never lived for herself until she met A2, and even if her life was short, it was finally hers. They say goodbye, smiling. A2 slumps next to the transporter, exhausted. Her body begins to glow, and she returns to her world. Back to Roppy's team, C1002 screams for B0006, but then B006's body glows and vanishes. They confront 6000D. Her true nature surfaces. She says she can't stand seeing the others that look like her. She points her weapon at C1002. Her logic, C1002 must be a replicant created by the gatekeeper. Better safe than sorry. Anise and Neon try to reason with her. Neon says they're friends. 6000D snaps. We're not friends. She says Neon wouldn't understand what it's like to be surrounded by copies of yourself. She wanted to be unique, special. Then the ground shakes. The energy 9S detected earlier enters 6000D's body. The mass-produced Nikkes charge at her. A blinding light appears, and where 6000D once stood is now a massive rapture. I'm getting flashbacks to when Adam and Eve were created. You now have to fight it, and once you defeat it, surprise, it's not dead. You have to aim for its core, and even then, it doesn't work. It tries to regenerate. 6000D begs, don't destroy my uniqueness. 9S scans for a second core, and finds it underground. 2B charges in, plunges her sword into it. Meanwhile, Roppy and the others attack the main core. There's a flash of light, the old 6000D appears, and so do the transporters 2B and 9S need. 2B and 9S begin to say their goodbyes. Just before leaving, C1002 stops them. She asks, do they think the deaths of her friends were caused by their design? Is her sadness part of her design too? 2B replies, even if everything is predetermined, that to me doesn't negate the value of your individual feelings. Your sadness belongs to you and you alone. C1002 begins to cry. 2B and 9S enter the transporters and vanish in a flash of light. 6000D wakes up. She's the only one left. The others are gone. She realizes she must be the original. But what's the point? They'll just wipe her memories, replace her body, and start the cycle over again. Life has a beginning and an end. But for her, no end. Just loop after loop. She pulls out a pistol. I will become my own person. Then we hear a gunshot. In the final scene, Anderson explains that 6000D's mission, she was part of a group sent to the factory. She was the only survivor. During the mission, she fired a bullet to destroy a Rapture's core. Just as she fired, a D-wave went off. The two transporters appeared before her. Her memory logs are damaged at this point, and they can't figure out what happened after that. Convenient. While in the factory, she found a hall of doors. Raptures and Nikkes locked in endless combat. Anderson believes that's when a mind switch occurred. Quick recap, a mind switch is a unique kind of breakdown Nikkes can suffer. It happens when they lose their humanity, when they stop eating, sleeping, or finding joy. Their minds fracture, they become unstable, emotionless, and it's irreversible. Back to the factory, B006 and 6000D lie dead. Only C1002 remains. She asks the commander what to do. You, the player, you must choose. Just like Pascal's side quest in Automata. You get 3 options. Tell her to live, erase her memories, or do nothing. I chose live through the pain. Anise agrees. C1002 nods and says she'll try. Later in Anderson's office, we find out what happened to her. She was disposed of. The central government feared that she'd gone through the same thing of what 6000D did. The commander returns to his room, and the story reflects on the question, what makes this unique? What makes me, me? And then flashbacks to 2B and 9S echoing that answer. Even if everything's predetermined, that to me doesn't negate the value of your individual feelings. Your sadness belongs to you and you alone. And that wraps up the main story. Now, let's dive into the Bond stories. Pascal is part of this crossover event. Even though you may notice he doesn't show up in the main story, he is a playable character. And I have to say, I screamed when I saw him banging his head with his eyes flickering red. No, don't do that to my boy. His story begins outside of the factory. He has no idea where he is and comes across a Nikke, who immediately assumes he's a Rapture. Understandable. Pascal pleads with her not to shoot. He tells her he's a machine life form who means no harm. He notices the Nikke has an injured leg. She collapses, still accusing him of being a Rapture, but he doesn't even know what a Rapture is. He asks her, what is this place? Realizing he's confused, the Nikke calms down. Pascal introduces himself, and she remarks how nice it is to have a name. They confirm he's not from this world, and talk about her injuries. She needs parts to repair herself, but can't move. Pascal offers to help. It may not be his world, but he refuses to abandon her. They travel together for several days. The Nikke shares what life is like here, calling it hell on earth. Pascal, ever the optimist, disagrees. He wants to show her that there's still beauty in this world. As they journey, he encouraged her to look up at the sky, to feel the breeze, to notice the animals around them. She realizes she never really looked before. Pascal says that while both of their worlds are full of conflict, there is still beauty in them. Just as she begins to warm up to hope, they hear rumbling from the factory. Pascal insists on checking it out. He asks the Nikke to stay put. He'll only observe and come back, and she agrees. But, unfortunately, a Rapture finds her before he returns. She stays silent, not wanting to alert Pascal. The Rapture destroys her, leaving nothing behind. Pascal returns. He searches for her, but can't find her. Then, a flash of white light appears, and he's sent back to his world. Now for 2B. Most of 2B's story revolves around her and Rappi getting to know one another and their respective worlds. At one point, the group needs to secure a place to rest, but there's no room available where the doors can be locked. NieR scans the area and finds a room with a working lock. He and 2B offer to scout ahead, but Rappi stops them. She doesn't trust them yet. What if they find a transporter and leave them behind? NieR can't offer reassurance. 2B understands Rappi's concerns and proposes that she and Rappi go together instead. NieR protests, but 2B shuts him down. As they scout, Rappi apologizes to B for her attitude, saying she comes off as distrusting. 2B replies that it's a valid response. Their priorities don't align, and that kind of suspicion makes sense. Also, I laughed a little here. Rappi didn't come off as distrusting. Girl, you straight up didn't trust them, and that's okay. They make it to the safe room. Inside, they find evidence that other Nikkes had taken shelter there. There's a journal detailing how they were running low on food and waiting for rescue. In one of the entries, a Nikke mentions recording something on the radio. 2B and Rappi listen to it. It's a broadcast celebrating the Goddess Squad's first victory. The recording gave the previous occupants hope. To them, the Goddess Squad represented salvation. But not just the Goddess Squad, Nikkes in general. We never find out what happened to the Nikkes who stayed in that room. Rappi and 2B hope they survived. For now, the room is secure, and they go back to bring the others. Also, for some quick context, the Goddess Squad was made up of the first Nikkes sent to fight the Raptures in this war. Now, on to A2's story. While exploring the factory, A2 and P12 come across a baby bird. It's weak and likely won't survive if left alone. A2 wants to leave it. P12 wants to help it. At least get it out of the factory. She pleads with A2, who sighs and agrees. It's a surprisingly cute moment. They try to give the bird water. P12 decides to name it AP. A for A2, P for P12. That's sweet. At night, P12 does her best to keep the bird warm, noticing its body temperature dropping. She eventually falls asleep with AP in her arms. The next day, the bird is doing better, almost ready to fly. A2 even pets it. They place AP on the windowsill to see if it can fly. It struggles. P12 turns to A2, unsure what to do. A2 says, "Wait, it hasn't given up yet. Why should you?" Then AP takes flight. P12 thanks A2, and A2 tries to play it off, but can't help smiling. And that covers everything for this crossover event. I was excited. My goal was to get A2 first, and I had enough tickets from the Stellar Blade crossover event just to get her as soon as the banner dropped. Then I got lucky and pulled 2B. And on the final day of the event, I had just enough tickets and gems to try again, and when you know it, I maxed out A2. A couple of small things I found a little rude though. When you look at the character descriptions, both Kira Buckland and Yui Ishikawa are credited for voicing 2B in English and Japanese dub. But for A2, we get Ayaka Asua listed for Japanese, but Jeremy Lee is marked as unknown. Rude. Also, if you're going to hire the original voice actors, why not give the crossover full dialogue? The game has made over $1 billion. You can afford it. Another weird note, there's a moment in the story where the characters point out how similar Rappi and 2B sound. I thought it was random since I played it in English and Kira Buckland doesn't voice Rappi, but after a quick Google search, yeah, Yui Ishikawa voices both Rappi and 2B in Japanese. Once again, why is there no voice acting? Anyway, rant over. I was happy to hear Pascal's voice actors return too. So what do you think of this story? For me, it was okay. Yoko Taro didn't write it, so as of now, it's not canon or lore. As for Nikke itself, it's a gacha game. If that's your thing, the story is solid. But honestly, the story deserves better than the gacha game. This video isn't to talk about the gameplay, but if you want to talk about that in the comments, let me know. Thanks for all your continued support. Don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button to help this page grow. See you guys next time. Bye!